Hi, I'm Chris May, writer, producer, and host of This Day in Weather History, now in its second year from the Weather Network in Canada. Canada is home to the province of Newfoundland, Labrador, and along its north coast is Gander. And as far as I know, is still the only Canadian town that has inspired a hit Broadway musical. If you've seen Come From Away, here is a side story that the weather played. We raise the curtain this day in weather history. It developed in the Gulf of Mexico on the same day as the September 11th terrorism attacks on the United States. For 2 days following, flights were grounded in and out of the nation. For the hundreds of flights stranded outside of the United States as a result, it was not made any easier when Gabrielle struck Florida on September 14th, causing another day of additional cancellations. Gander is an otherwise unassuming but wildly picturesque small Atlantic Canadian town. In 2001, its population was barely over 9,500. So when they took in nearly 6,700 frightened strangers who had no plans to land in the North Atlantic province of Newfoundland and Labrador, it also nearly doubled their population on the day when the September 11, 2001 terror attacks forced 38 planes to land there. But Hurricane Gabrielle was a North Atlantic hurricane that caused flooding in both Florida and Newfoundland in that very same month of September in 2001. The storm moved ashore in Florida with winds of 70 miles per hour, that's about 110 kilometers per hour, south of the Tampa Bay area. It was the combination of the strong wind and heavy rain that peaked at 15 inches or 380 millimeters. It was that left 570,000 customers without power along the west coast and an additional 126,000 customers without power on the east coast. After crossing the state, Gabrielle looked to have occluded in on itself, looking more like a subtropical cyclone. Nope, not by a long shot. Gabrielle re-intensified and became a hurricane on September 17th as it passed northwest of Bermuda. The storm caused close to $250 million in 2001 USD in damage in Florida and contributed to 2 deaths. Now, about the Newfoundland conundrum. Early in the day on September 19th, this day in weather history, Gabrielle transitioned into an extratropical cyclone about 350 miles or 560 kilometers south of the island province in the North Atlantic. What was left of Gabrielle passed a short distance southeast of Newfoundland before re-strengthening to reach winds of 75 miles per hour or 121 kilometers per hour. Not at all what this province needed while hosting close to 7,000 expats who have no idea what's become of their home country. The remnant of Gabrielle dropped heavy rainfall in a short period of time across Newfoundland, with one stage to Cape Race recording 48 millimeters in only an hour. In a 24-hour period, the St. John's Airport recorded 4.67 inches, or just a hair shy of 120 millimeters of rain, which was only 2.6 millimeters from breaking the existing record. The heaviest rain accumulation was registered at the Memorial University of Newfoundland in St. John's when it peaked at 175 millimeters, which is basically about 7 inches of rain. This rain resulted in mass flooding, washing out 2 roads and flooding 20 others, along with some basements of houses with several feet of water. The flooding damage also closed 15 schools, which incidentally had just opened for a brand new school year only 2 weeks prior, and affected an additional 45 businesses. There were multiple reports of overwhelmed sewers, while hurricane-force wind gusts caused, you guessed it, the cancellation of flights and left thousands without power, telephone, or heat. It was a terrible storm at a terrible time in history. It was Hurricane Gabrielle that knocked into Newfoundland and Labrador on September 19th of 2001, only 8 days after the terrifying terrorism attacks on the U.S. And it happened this day in weather history. Hey, do you like the podcast? We'd love to hear from you. If you have an idea, go right now to wherever you're listening to me and rate us if you would, please. It's on a 5-star system, and we would love as many stars as you can afford. So rate us, but then also review us. This way we can always stay on top of how you'd like to see the show evolve. Then remember to subscribe to this podcast. Click the subscribe or follow button right there on the very same podcast homepage you're listening on. You'll be immediately reminded that the next day is ready to listen to, and you also have access to every episode in the archives. It dates back to June 1st of 2020, so there is a lot that we got to get caught up on this day in weather history. Tomorrow is September the 20th, and this was the most destructive tropical cyclone on record to strike this Canadian North Atlantic island province. It was Hurricane Igor. We will cover this from start to wrap tomorrow on This Day in Weather History with me, your host, Chris May.